Hello, everybody. Welcome to another amazing episode of Positive Attraction with Coach Henry. That is me, your host. And today I will only start it off by saying TLB. She can let you know what that means. Okay, maybe it means Texas Little Buddy. Everyone has one nickname. I don't share them. They're not recyclable. So that's usually people's question. But before further ado, who is this amazing and lovely guest across from me?
Hi, friend. Good to see you. I'm Aundrea Dudik, TLB. I'm actually from Las Vegas, so it's very sweet that I got Texas Little Buddy. But I'm a mama of two little girls, two toddlers. They're 4 and 2.5, so they keep me on my toes.
Yes.
And I've got a wonderful husband. We've been married for 6 years, so 2018.
6 years sounds good. 6 years, yeah.
And I'm an associate broker and realtor at Vista Real Estate. We're the biggest family-owned brokerage in our area in Central Texas.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for being a guest. The nickname is authentic, as it has to, sometimes people joke and they, how do you do a nickname or give me a nickname? And I'm like, no, I don't give anything. It just has to happen. And I appreciate that in our relationship. So I'll jump in so everyone knows a little bit about you, is that our relationship started with obviously Brownstone. That is our main company that we do business, real estate development. And through that, we had the fortunate of meeting you. And a little thing that people ask is how I met you is authentic in itself. My job is to vet things out. So when we go into a new area, typically I like to do 3s and 3s because I feel sometimes there's a high, a low, and a middle, or a bad, a good, and a gray, right? So in your case, we were going to a new territory, which was Temple. None of us knew a lot about Temple. We had a great business opportunity out there. So I randomly, from Google, Yelped, start looking at agents. I start looking at bios. And then I start getting on the phone, and I remember speaking to you, if you recall. And after we spoke,
I thought you were spam.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, So, and then when we were able to speak, and I kind of told you the vision of what Brownstone's trying to do in that area, I just felt like this person gets it. We met, and it was over. And not only we and are doing great business together, it's turned out to be a great friendship, and I appreciate that. So, I wanted people to understand this relationship because a lot of times people, it's just friendship, it's just business, or they get convoluted. But you have done a phenomenal job of keeping our friendship, our business, having fun on this journey of life, which makes it great. So let's get right into you, because they don't want to hear about me. They want to hear about who is this amazing person. So one of the first questions that I have to kick this off is, your background did not start in real estate. Your background, your schooling. So tell us a bit about your schooling and how that was a passion and then evolved us to today.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm originally from Las Vegas, Nevada, wound up in Temple, Texas, which is about an hour north of Austin. We're the largest medical hub between Austin and Dallas. Didn't know it existed. I ended up here because I met my husband on Match.com at some point.
Shout out to Match.com, another success story.
And never thought I'd be here, but I'm so glad I am.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I was originally from Las Vegas, Nevada, born and raised. I got my bachelor's in psychology with a minor in human services. I actually thought that I wanted to be a therapist for developmentally challenged children. That was actually the route that I was certain that I was going to go, working with their families. And so I got through undergrad and I started my grad program, which was clinical mental health. It was clinical therapy. I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excelled in all the things. It felt very natural. I felt like I was where I needed to be.
Yeah.
Top of my class, all the things, right? And
it checked all the boxes.
It felt super fulfilling. I'd worked as a legal secretary during that time, probably 8 years, and then into it. Finished grad school. I said this, hey, the one thing about going to therapy school that I'll never regret is it forces so much self-reflection. All of the things that you're asking your clients to do, you have to do.
Yeah.
And so I learned so many valuable skills that I think actually have made me very successful in what I'm doing today, because it teaches you so many arts of communication and active listening and really hearing people and meeting them.
Well,
So-
you know, on that, I want to just jump in because I agree with you. Having firsthand experience as in our business relationship, you know, you communicate top tier, 100%. You do listen. And this is the real, so it's a plug, but it's a real plug that's earned, and we need to share, and that is that you are authentic to small details. And I think because you take the time, and I think if you take at your psychology and all the things you've did, like you said, you had to also look at yourself, you know, your strengths, your weaknesses, and also keeps you in check, right? So I love that I can literally say we as Brownstone have experienced some of that transition. Now, as you're sharing a little bit more about that, I want to just pivot back. How is that transition? I know you're getting there, but how is that transition from, you know, something that you felt fulfilled, boxes checked, and all of a sudden now you're like a full-blown entrepreneur?
Yes. So I came out to, fast forward, I came out to Texas. I knew I'd already met my husband, but I'd already planned to come out here. He'll tell you I moved out here from Farmers Only for him, but that was none of that is accurate. That's sort of and so I knew I'd wanted to come to Texas. That's a whole nother story. Came out here, started a private practice. At some points I worked in a psych facility, in a big psych facility in Georgetown. Worked for the DA's office out of Waco. And I remember sitting in a therapy session and I just thought, I am so bored. And I felt guilty because here's this person being so vulnerable and transparent with me, and I said, I cannot do this forever. I just can't. Right. And I carried such guilt with that. And I'd gone back to Vegas and I was driving around. I remember being in my car and I had this epiphany where I thought, you know, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you have to do it.
Wow, that's a big, okay, that's a good phrase right there, TLB. You know, I like that. And that's a real statement.
And
so
it hit me in the gut. It was like my subconscious was giving me permission to not stay stuck or to not stay unhappy and or unfulfilled. That's more of what it was. Unfulfilled. And I had all this guilt around, well, I have all these skill sets and people are telling me I'm good at it and I'm changing lives. You know, maybe I shouldn't waste my skill. And I said, but I have so many other valuable skills and I don't feel that those are being challenged. Yeah. And so I reached out to my old clinical supervisor and I said, hey, Frank, I'm not in this. And he spent so much time watching me grow, and he said, real estate. And I never thought about it, and I did, and I signed up for classes that night because I'm all about getting stuff done.
Yes, and you are.
It's been just forward moving since then. And then actually one of the coolest things in all of that was I took an assessment. I think I might have told you. It's called this Clifton-based strengths assessment. Uh-huh. And it's all around this principle that, of course, we have weaknesses, but there's no point in focusing on those. Right. Most people can't change those weaknesses to a great degree. Focus on your strengths. Yeah. And when I did that, it made it very clear why I liked therapy, but why it needed to be tweaked, and why real estate's such a good fit, and I love it so much.
Well, number one, congratulations on that, because I am personally and as a company recipients of that transition. Mm-hmm. Thank you. But, you know, I want to bring you, because part of this, you know, when people ask me about this show, they go, what is the point of positive traction? I said, the point is to share authentic stories of highs, lows, and a couple of aligned principles that matter to me, right? Because I believe as I'm meeting people and traveling, I see people, and the number one thing I see is they lose hope, they lose passion, or they can't find it. They make things a lot more complicated. But you did something and said something. Now, I know it was a process, but I want to go back to your comment. Just because you're good at something, right? Because I think about it, look at you, you might have had pressures of family, you might have had all kinds of pressures because, well, this is what you went to school for and here's what you're doing. And then, well, are you giving up and you're not going to be an entrepreneur? I can only imagine. So let's share maybe just a few simple points that someone out there that's maybe in a career path or maybe even a personal relationship. Right? Let's just get real. And they're like, well, I put 40 years into this marriage or 4 years. Again, in no way am I ever saying not to make relationships work of any kind. But I'm saying that a lot of people sometimes they listen to all the things rather than the alternate passion of who they are. So let's just stick to the business part. So for you, when you were trying to make those decisions, other than frank and speaking things, and when did it start feeling right? How soon, the minute you said real estate, how soon did you feel it? There it is.
It's interesting because one of my biggest guides, I guess, in decision making is checking very simply if a decision I'm making is from a place of fear or a place of love.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. Dropping some notes on TLB.
Oh. And so if it's from a place of fear, I'm really evaluating that because that's going to keep me stuck. It's not coming from the right place. And not to say that when it comes from a place of love, it isn't also a little bit scary in the process.
Yeah.
Because change is scary, but it's scarier not doing the thing you love. And so for me, I just really felt that I was hardworking and my values, I'd kind of excelled in any small job or career that I put myself in. So I really didn't have that fear of failure. I thought, well, if I don't like it, then I'll just go do something else. But I just didn't want to stay stuck.
Right. And I would imagine, I'm thinking, okay, here's everything. And the reason I brought up relationships and business and just in that, because so many people stay stuck. So many people stay complacent. So many people settle. And then here's what I get from settling. And I like to go off topic for a moment because I know that this is a friendship conversation as well, is when people get stuck, it usually leads to boredness, right? They're bored. They start wandering, and then they're not happy, and then they start grumbling. So when you look at a grumbler, right? Think of someone that we both might know that's always grumbling, always miserable. If you look at the whole thing, well, what are you doing to change it? And you said it, is that we don't take actions, right? And it doesn't mean it's going to be solved overnight, but you took a risk. You're like, all these boxes checked out, but I still don't, you said, I don't feel fulfilled. And you took actions, and yes, you hit it great out of the ballpark the first time out with real estate, meaning that seemed right, but it could have not been. It could have been that led to 2 or 3 more things. So I love what you said, that a good fear keeps you ignited, but a bad fear keeps you still, right? So now that you kind of made that transition, things are starting to, now you're an entrepreneur, and that's a whole different ball of challenges. So can you think of 2 or 3 initial challenges in those first year, 2 years that someone can listen to this can go, okay, I'm stuck. I want to move forward. I'm scared. And then I'm going to go into the unknown of entrepreneurship. What are a couple of things that had you overcome them?
Well, I think just to back up a little bit, you'd asked, how did I know when I'd made it? I wasn't bored. Right? Like I can still, even now, I have to rein it in because I can stay up till all hours of the night working and doing things. There's always more to learn, more to do, ways to grow, whether that's, just education, self-help. I mean, there's a lot going on in real estate right now in general, so that's keeping us pretty busy. But I think that's how I knew is I think I'm 7 years in now, and I still love it. But to answer your question, repeat the question. What'd you say?
I just said, how did you feel like this was the right move? Right? Because when you threw real estate out, you looked at it, but at some point you said a couple challenges. Yes, but I like that you brought that up. Is how did you know? You shared that with you, and then what are some of those challenges? Because now that you feel you're on the right track, right? let's just use the example because I like to give people a visual. You're leaving from Las Vegas to Texas. You miss a flight. At what point is something saying detour, or at some point you're like, no, I need to continue. That's where I want to get out of you.
So it was actually very difficult at first because everyone knows a realtor. Everybody knows one.
Yeah,
and not only that, I'm not from here.
Yep.
So I'm from Las Vegas. My whole sphere is from Las Vegas.
And let's give people a picture, TLB. Temple is a beautiful and growing city, but it is on the suburbs of Austin. Especially 7 years ago, you do have a little bit more country thinking, you know what I'm saying? So it's not like a vibrant Austin city. So you're now coming in as an outsider, okay, into a community that's, some things are kind of set in Texas ways, and everyone knows somebody. So how are you breaking in, like you said? So continue. I just want to give people that you came into a very tough market.
I did, and it's so true. And you have to think too, I mean, not only am I not from here, but I'm very city girl. I mean, and so I think Las Vegas. So I think the part that immersed me well and had me connect with the people here was my values. Right? The whole reason I moved here and the whole reason I wanted to be here was because I wanted to align myself somewhere that had similar values to me.
Yeah.
And not all, but culturally, the people here are so good. They're so good. They wave on the streets. I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand when people were waving, and I kept asking my husband, "Do you know them?" And he said, "No, people just wave here." Well, people don't just wave in Las Vegas, you know.
No, they don't. No, they do not wave in Las Vegas. And if they wave, they're not waving that.
No, they're waving a finger. They sure are. Yeah. and so when I first got started, it was pretty difficult because I was still in therapy and I was trying to transition, and it was the financial piece because I still had my contributions that I was making to our family. We weren't married yet. And actually, my best friend, Val, you've met Val.
Yes.
We've watched each other grow a lot over the years. This is actually, I think, a very humbling story. And I know not everyone has this opportunity, but I think that it's worth noting. She said, "Aundrea, I feel like I know you very well, and I feel like you're on the right path and you're in the right direction. I don't think you're going to take the plunge." And so she said, I want to lend you $5,000. And I mean, that was going to be my whole next month and a half's bills.
Right.
And
she wanted to give you a little breathing room.
Mm-hmm. And she said, if I do this, will you? I don't expect it back, but I know you will because I know you. Mm-hmm. Take it. And so I quit, and I started somewhere. Sorry, I'm still learning this, Mac. I started somewhere that was very heavy lead generation, because the most difficult part to me in getting started, which I think a lot of entrepreneurs suffer with, is where do the leads come from? Yeah. And so I found somewhere that was really lead heavy, and I told them, before kids and all that, I said, I'll be your workhorse. Yeah. I said, I know the money's going to cost more for me, they get more, that sort of thing. But I know I work hard, and I need the learning experience, and I need those connections, and they don't come easy, and they cost money that I don't have. So it's a trade. So I did that, and I did that for 9 months with them, and I worked very hard, and I closed a lot of deals during that time. But what started to happen was those people started coming back very quickly. They started referring, and they started coming back, and that was the turning point for me, was trying it on my own for a year and realizing all the things I was doing. But it's all about systems. So I had to figure out what system was going to work, and then I just had to replicate it. Yeah. And
I love that, TLB, and there's 3 things that stick out to me that I want, hopefully, the listeners, along with all the other great things you're sharing, is one is you aligned yourself with like-minded people in business, and you were willing to be humble enough to understand that not only are you going into entrepreneurship, that means you have your own schedule. And people, that's a whole topic for another day, but you're also learning a new industry, okay? And you're also in relatively a new relationship in person, a new city, a new town, a whole new way of thinking. And there's a lot of challenges.
There was a lot of change.
Absolutely, and changes and challenges, and you came from basically a more logistical career path that's kind of set. You do your therapy, you take your schooling. I mean, it was kind of more laid out than the entrepreneur craziness of ups and downs and emotions. But I think that because what I get this from you is number one, you were willing to believe in yourself, and you also knew that you had to watch. So you were willing to take less, let others kind of teach you. You went in and put everything into it, which is an attribute to your education, attribute to your work skills and your habits. So when people say, well, what's it take? I always say it takes persistence. It takes you believing yourself more than not, because then you're in less doubt land and more do land, and then you refresh and reevaluate. So I love that brought you. I also think it's great you had a friend that believed in your ability, that said, you need to have a little bit of that off your plate so that you can breathe a moment, and then you didn't look back. So that is awesome. And I know there's a lot to that, but I think that's some great principles on that. So can you fast forward to today for a moment, right now, a day in the life of TLB, and then give a reference point of the middle, the good gray and the jump. So what would you say that you kept through this entire journey that has led you to today, of either a tip or something that keeps you going, that every time it got hard, you did not quit?
So when I took that strengths assessment, it outlined my top 5 strengths, and my very first one is discipline.
Okay.
I think my second is focus, and my third is achievement.
Okay.
Number 4, I think, was community. So when I did that, I could see community and connectedness is in my skill set, in my top skill set. But there was almost, I needed the checking off the boxes. I needed the completion of tasks, and therapy is very abstract.
Yeah.
It's hard to rein it in. But the gray and the variations, average day in the life. I would say the thing that has stayed true is just always going back to the values, because at the end of the day, if I'm living in alignment to those, I'm going to feel peace, and I'm going to feel connected, and I'm going to be trusting myself. When we do things, when things start to feel uncomfortable, or they start to feel wrong, or we're around people that aren't right for us, it's because there's a disconnect in our values. Doesn't mean we can't be socially appropriate. We know we have to do that in life, but forming those relationships and doing the things they have to be in alignment. So I think that's the one thing that's always stayed true, and I hope always will, is evaluating that and making sure that at the end of the day, whether more money or more success or whatever comes in, that I'm still reflecting back on that. I'm still being a good person. I'm still being honest, because that's I always want to be direct and kind, right? I don't think we have to be mean to get points across, and I think that's something we really connect on.
Well, I think, yes, we do 100%. I love what you shared, and as you're speaking, I've never thought of it this way, but this is why I love these type of conversations. I'm going to say, and tell me if you agree with this, and if you don't, it's okay. Values to me is the foundation upon which you're building your house on, right? So in your case, your values, you identified what matters to you. And because it matters to you, you then kind of created, and you said your top was discipline, community.
Well, those were my skills. Those are my top.
Yes. So then you add those values through your skill process. And then I think that's what a lot of people miss. And that's why I want to highlight that, because a lot of people they don't know what their values are. They don't recognize their top skill sets. And yes, like you said, work on your weaknesses, but don't let that overshadow your strengths, right?
It's much easier to fine-tune the strengths. You'll spend a lot less time fine-tuning the strengths because it's natural to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So on your values, I love that. And I think so. That's what I want everybody listening or watching, please, she hit a home run what your values are matters. When people go, what are your values, Henry? I go, look, my values are quite simple. My faith is everything. So if that's ever compromised, there is no black and white. I mean, there is only black and white there, and that's not being stubborn. Values is different. Values means this is the very core of who I am. So either people like it or they don't, and that's the beauty, because then you ultimately, right, let's just use a fast food chain. Let's give a shout out to In-N-Out Burger, for example.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, good stuff. So if you know that's what you want, then you go. They're not trying to please everybody. I always say they're open to everybody, but not everybody wants to come in. And what I admire about you is you've established your values, which means you have put the concrete of your foundation, and you found a husband that matches those values. And together you then build a beautiful family. From that beautiful family, now you're building careers and all kinds of things. And even Brandon went through a big change this last year, and he was able to go, okay, tried it. I'm not too prideful. A lot of credit for him as a man. Seriously, great man for that. He's like, let me pivot back over here. And I love that. And that's another story. But I love, and I hope that people from this episode really tune in to their values. But if you can either send me, and I want to put it in our tag, is that website or that test that you took. And I recommend to people, guys, I know TLB let me do a test. Mushka and I were out there one time and we did a test. But it does allow you to kind of understand, like, oh, that's why I do get along with this person and not that person. And so I love that. So great stuff, TLB. I do want to touch on the robotic part of your life. That was a very challenging part of your life. So through all these things, this little thing that wasn't so little, can you share a little about your health that definitely has made your journey even that much more, at this point, even more grateful for it?
This was huge for me. This was huge. So I call 2015 my year of change.
Yeah.
And I'd ended my biggest year of change. I ended a 9-year relationship. I sold my house, my first house that I'd purchased on my own. And I just finished grad school. So I'm thinking about starting my new career. I had plans to move to Texas. And then later in that year, I'd met Brandon. I met him just after my surgery. And in March of 2015, I'd had some tests done because over that past year I kept having migraines with stroke symptoms. And every time I went to the ER, kept telling me that these are headaches, they're headaches. And I'd had a condition when I was 12 that was found, but I think my family misunderstood what it was, and so it wasn't really looked into much further. And I have hydrocephalus, which is fluid on the brain. So your brain has fluid in it to keep it safe and cushioned, and mine was pooling on the top of my brain, and it wasn't draining appropriately, and it was causing brain swelling.
Hence the headaches and everything else.
Part of it, yes. And so I'd had that, and so when they had told me it was just migraines, I thought, well, I should probably get this evaluated further. Long story short, I had hydrocephalus, which was pooling on the brain, causing brain swelling. I have another condition. It's called a Chiari malformation. There's a couple different types, but part of my brain stem, you have the hole in your back of your neck. Part of my brain, separate from the hydrocephalus, it pushes out the bottom of that stem. That hole. So the brain stem is coming out, so it causes nerve damage. And so I went in. It was the day before my comps exam for grad school. The day before I take my big exam that tells you whether or not you're going to, night before. Going by myself because I think nothing's wrong. Like, I'm sure they're going to tell me, right? Been healthy otherwise. Super healthy. Work out all the time. I don't even have, I wasn't on a single medication.
Right.
And I walk in, and the doctor was very quiet, and he turned to me, and I remember thinking, he's been quiet for a really long time. Yeah. And he said, you do have hydrocephalus, you do have a Chiari malformation, which I think is causing the headaches, but what I'm more concerned is that you have a very large brain aneurysm and you need to go to the hospital tonight.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let's just take that moment, because I want people to understand that this only magnifies your journey much more. And I always had a lot of respect for you. But when you put things in that, right, like you said, you were healthy, pretty much prime of your life in the sense of youth, all the things going on. You go in so casually that, yeah, I got, and then all of a sudden he's saying right now, tonight, we got to do surgery.
Yeah. Well, and it wasn't even surgery. I didn't even know what to expect. I mean,
Wow.
I didn't know what that was going to look like. And I was super independent, living on my own. I'd already, I had all these big plans. And basically what they had said was I didn't need surgery that night. If I had an aneurysm, I probably had it for a long time. It wasn't likely to rupture that night. So go home, set up with a neurologist and all that. And what ended up resulting from that was I just have a funky brain. It's not actually a brain aneurysm, so that was a big blessing. That part was. And then awesome. In 2015, they put a shunt in my head, so it's right here, and I can actually feel it when I touch it. It's under my skin, and they shaved my head, half my head.
Yeah.
Which I have a lot of hair, thank God, but it was, as a woman, that was hard, right? People are like, oh
yeah.
Hair,
yeah.
But it symbolized more than that. I don't think people realize, like, it's what it symbolizes and what it means. And when you're going through that, you're grappling for control.
Yeah.
Any amount of control, especially someone like me, it's all.
Yeah.
And so they shaved my head, they put in the shunt, and the night before I was all good. I wasn't real nervous about it. And what it does is there's a pressure release valve on the shunt, so it picks up the extra fluid, and I have a tube in my neck that drains into the outer lining of my stomach. I don't feel it. I don't really even ever notice it's there. And now it works great, and people would never guess it. But Henry, I'll have to show you pictures one day. I was a skeleton. I was probably 40 pounds less than I am now. You could see every bone in my body. Wow. I was bedridden. My mom had to help me bathe, shower. I couldn't get up. I think a month went by before I even really realized I was awake. It was horrible.
Wow.
And it took a lot of recovery, and I cried a lot. And what the most interesting thing, to summarize in all this, the most interesting thing, well, there's two things. One is how resilient the body is.
Yeah.
It's just so resilient, because people would never know how sick I was.
Right.
And the second part of that is, it was very humbling, and it forced me to rely on people in a way that I never had.
Right.
And it forced me out of that really awful relationship. I was already on the way out, but it really forced me out of it. And like, my mom was helping me shower. I was a grown woman.
Yeah.
And you don't even care. And the people that kind of came out during that time, I think people that have gone through health scares kind of say this a lot. The amount of people that came out, I felt so loved and seen and connected to the world. And that was probably the biggest takeaway, was allowing people. I didn't have a choice. So really allowing people to care for me, and realizing how good how not only, I think people forget too, not only does it feel good to be taken care of, but it feels good to take care of other people too.
Well, I think, again, I don't want to go past that story without touching on the humbling part, right? Because you have a genuine heart and actions. A large part is who you are and your values, but a large part is something you went through. And every once in a while, I think, it might be like you're brushing your hair and you touch it, or something you're like, wow, like, I'll never forget those moments. But the beautiful thing about that, TLB, instead of you staying in a place that wasn't good, you take from it the good. And I think that's where a lot of people miss the boat, right? You literally had a second chance at life, for lack of better, but you ran with it. You have a flourishing family, you have a career, you're constantly being kind, you're thoughtful. And I want to push that, because in our society today, everything is always, it's the negative people, it's the loud little chihuahuas that have nothing good to say, to get all the attention, and the people, and this is why this platform is important to me. Maybe I might have 1,000 more listeners if we created this to be dramatic and there's more gossip. And there's some shows, and we're all guilty of watching some of them. I get it. But at the end of the day, when someone like yourself is in that hospital bed or in recovery, that's real life. That's where I want to meet people. See, that to me is where I want people. And then those not to have to be there, and meet people, right? So what I mean by that is to think back going like, man, you had to be humbled. So it's not bad to ask for help, but we're given this, I'm independent, and especially for the women, I am strong, and if I have a man help me, then no, it's about community, and it's such a lie. And even my son and I went through this too, like I don't need any help from my dad, and like, no, like we're meant to be community.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, that's it. And yes, if enabling and you being a mom, like, well, when do I jump in and when do they got to learn on their own? Yeah, there's a balance. But at the end of the day, we were meant to live in community and together. And our independence is to help each other, right? And that's why we click. I'm not supposed to be good at everything, and that's why I believe God made a husband and wife so that Brandon's going to be good at certain things and you're good at some things, but together you guys are just a great couple. That's how it's supposed to be, in my opinion.
How boring would it be if we were good at everything? Nothing would be a challenge. Yeah. We'd never feel proud of ourselves, Yeah. And I think for me, I didn't understand it until I had girls or, until I had children. And I remember being so scared of having girls. Yeah. And now I'm so proud because I think I want to raise strong daughters, and I want to raise daughters that feel secure and who see a hardworking mom. I mean, I'm one of our top producing agents at a very large brokerage.
Yeah.
Probably the best, definitely the best year of my career with two toddlers, which is a constant balance, right? Because of course I want to be a good mom and making sure, but also it's good for them. It's good for them to see what hard work and dedication looks like. And
that's right.
I want them to see that and feel proud of themselves. And so yeah, I think ultimately, yes, my own children, but just, you said it perfectly. Life's about connecting with other people, whatever that looks like.
Well, I love that, and I love what you shared. And number one, I'm glad that you're healthy and came from that. And but it is, we can't let anybody other than ourselves raise our families. Government, schools are meant to be helpful or an addition or whatever, we rely on all that. But it's up to the home to bring home values. For the girls to walk away going, okay, this is what I love about my mom and my dad. So I think it's great that they can go, no, look at my mom's on top of the tier. And mind you, in a very difficult real estate market, over the last year has been crazy. We've had to pivot ourselves in our endeavors together. But one of the key things that align our values is positive thinking, but being real. Sometimes people think, oh, Henry, you're always happy. It's not that I'm always happy. I just choose to be joyful because my joy isn't on the circumstance. My joy is because of my faith. And when it's on those values, then yes, I might have a bad day or a deal falls through, but that isn't going to deter a healthy family, like you said. At the end of the day, I love this quote, or I'm going to makeshift it and destroy it. It's everybody wants everything until they don't have health. And then only one thing matters, right? Yep. So if we can come from that place, you literally have been there, and stay humble, then everything else turns into like it's good.
It's just and it turns into gratitude. That's one of my favorite things about you and being connected. And I know there's so many people that think it's so cheesy, but I think until you really feel it, you don't get it. And it does sound cheesy. And living that experience, I am so grateful. And same here. I might have a rough week. I might have a rough 2 weeks. I'm evaluating it without judgment, acknowledging it without judgment. Where is that coming from? Okay, not beating myself up about it. We're human. We have feelings because they tell us which direction to go, right?
Absolutely.
This isn't in alignment with our values. It feels gross. It feels weird. It feels bad. It's
off.
It's off. Or it feels good. I'm headed in the right direction. And that's what they are. They're our compass. And so, and I think living that experience, I'm so grateful. When I go to the gym and I have one of the hardest workouts and I run 4 miles, I'm grateful. I'm proud. I'm grateful of a body that'll push itself that hard. Yes. Having gone through that, where there were days I couldn't get out of bed. If I get in a dispute with my spouse, I'm proud of us I'm grateful that we're able to have difficult conversations.
Yep.
And so I don't know. It definitely brings about an element of gratitude, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I love that, and I think that's one of the reasons, again, that we align as friends and align in business, because at the end of the day, we're I think one of the key things is learning to be grateful for the things, because then everything else is falling on that and not because of it, in the sense of, oh, well, that I had a good day. Yeah, but if you count your blessings more than you count your flaws, if you look at the good more than the bad, the strengths more than the weaknesses, it will be a better balance. So I love that, T.O.B. I love that. Well, this is the part of the show now where you get to ask me a question. Again, just like you didn't know what we're going to talk about, you went, and especially like you said, you and those that don't know you yet, you like to kind of know what's going on a little bit. That's the way your brain maximizes. But you definitely, in the time I've known you now, almost 2 years, you definitely have been great at audibles, better than most people that I know. So what comes to mind? Anything that you might want to ask me that the listeners might benefit from in this?
Oh my gosh,
awesome,
you're gonna have to pause this. Okay, I'm gonna
take a moment. I have one more follow-up to bring it in while you're thinking, because you shared some great nuggets, and I want to highlight them. Because I just want people to just grasp you. And I'm not going to give away your age, but you are on the younger side of life, married, 2 kids, career, juggling. And I only say that because people, again, you are proving that you can do a good balance, that you can have a good marriage that takes work, to be a good mom that takes work, be a good at your career, it takes work, and still look as cute as you do. So it's good.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So one of the things that happened in therapy was they tell you not to think while you are listening. And so as I like not to plan your next conversation so I have not been thinking of anything to ask you. So let me think. What would you say? So we did a little values assessment with you before.
Yeah.
What values would you, this might be challenging, say have remained consistent? I know faith would probably be the one, because we know that you've yourself have kind of rebuilt yourself multiple times, I believe.
Yeah.
Have your values changed over the last decade? And what values have remained consistent? Can you identify them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And going back to your statement earlier, no, I think that's a credit. You know, you're not thinking ahead, you're kind of being in the moment. I think that's wonderful. So yes, and you can tell it took you a minute to switch gears, but you didn't know I was going to ask you that question. But that's why I love this show, because I want people to just be real. And to me, it's about the one. You know, in our faith, we always talk about it's the one that gets away. It's the one we go after, and I think that's important, because sometimes we want to please everybody, and then the one person, in your case, you're being married, that you first start with that person, you know, in a good way. And what it has to do with your question is everything. My values, I don't think they've changed at all. I think they've been magnified because I've gone through a lot in this last 2 years. And let me be more specific, because a lot of times people go, what does that mean? What it means is I went through relationship change. You know, obviously I'm not married anymore, and I'll leave it at that. I didn't think I would be single at this stage of my life. So therefore, if my values weren't important to me, which is my faith, being true to yourself, to not be afraid to just step forward when you don't understand what's next, all that creates, to me, the life that you're meant to have. I think another value, I don't know if it's a value or skill set, you could tell me because you're better at this than me, is I don't spend time doubting myself. I just don't. I believe that I make a decision, I shouldn't have touched that, now I know, and I move on. Rather than sitting there and evaluating it for 17 minutes. Granted, there's certain things that do take proper time, but most people don't separate that. So for me, to answer your question specifically, I think my values have just been magnified to me of what matters to me. I identify faster those that are taking from me and those that are adding to my life. I can distinguish faster if someone's just having a bad day and they're a really good person, but I caught them in a bad moment. I think it's a gift that God has given me to be able to identify very quickly it's a zebra, not a thoroughbred horse, and they'll never become a thoroughbred horse. So I'm going to just accept them at being an amazing zebra, and that's it. And quit trying to make them something that they're not. So I think that all those values have helped me align myself faster with great people. They disappoint me, I disappoint them, but that doesn't change life, and it doesn't change my path. And because of that, I've always said, and I'll end with this, I want to be an athlete for God. I want to be an athlete, meaning living every day my best version. And if I'm at my best, or attempting to every day, working out, reading positive things, aligning with good people, then when I'm getting hit with things, it doesn't deter me as off as most people have. One bad thing happens, and man, they're off the rails for an entire day. So I don't know if that answers your question, but hopefully
it does. And I think that's very true for you, because you said they've magnified, and by doing that, they've just become more clear. And because they've become more clear, you're able to identify, like you said, very quickly when things aren't when they're not aligning with you.
Yeah. Thank you. And I knew you'd put it into good words. This is one of our therapy sessions, unofficially back in the day, right? But I think that's the thing, is that, look, I especially now, just being transparent and meeting all kinds of people in social settings, I'm not expecting, oh my gosh, this person's this or that. I'm just like, that's cool. I like it. Oh, I took that. Right? It's like going to a buffet of life, and you're so hungry, and you're like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Italian over here, Mexican food over here, pizza over here, right? Everything. But then when you go, you know what though? I'm gonna come in feeling good. I'm gonna come in, I'm starving, but I'm gonna wait. Okay, let me try a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I think when we look at life it's a lot simpler to look at. So I appreciate that question, because I should have known you were going to ask a deeper question, which you did.
I was trying to decide if I was going to do a fun one or an
no. I think people that hopefully are listening are enjoying that deeper one. But I have one recap with you, because I noticed, time flies, and I knew we were going to hit the max because of our great convos. I want to recap a couple principles that I took from you, so if you want to validate them more or you want to add anything to them. Number one is values. To me, I'm gonna equate that to your foundation. What are you building on? And when you really believe in those values. Now, is there a tip on those values? What if someone says, I don't know what I stand for? Is there any quick tips that you can say to find those?
It's kind of like what we did over cocktails, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really simple. When I worked at the psych facility, that was kind of a foundational piece in helping people that were coming in with such inner turmoil and anxiety and strength. And it's like, well, you're disconnected. You don't know who you are, and so you're turning to this and to this. You just don't know. You don't have the direction. And
it's kind of like the food analogy, because you can tell I'm getting hungry, right? Because it's you're going to the buffet every day and you don't know where to start. So many good things, right? Number one, let's go back to a great quality that you possess, being grateful. See, when you go in, instead of being overwhelmed, you're like, number one, thank you that I have food to choose from. See, and I match that to what you're saying, because instead of going like, oh my gosh, I have so many choices, someone make a choice for me.
Yeah, but if you're like, I don't even like seafood, so let's not start there.
There you go.
Italian's my favorite, or what am I feeling today? Not what's mom feeling, not what is,
Yeah.
Everything goes with the values, not your mom, not whoever's values, and that's a hard one too, because a lot of the values we've been raised with, some of them stay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of them shift, and we develop our own. And so checking that too, like, where did those values come from, and what do I feel want to stay?
Yeah.
But you can just Google list of values, find one that you like, and play the narrowing game. Highlight 20 values that jump out to you, that seem important to you, and then narrow it down. What are my top 10 values? What are my top 5 values? And then really look at those and say why, and ask yourself that question. Whose values are those? Are those mine? Where did they come from? Or these values that I was told to have from somebody, or parents, or whoever,
That is great tidbit. That is, we're going to do a little mini series on that. I think we'll come up here and you know what we should do, and I'll talk to the team. We'll let a guest come in or ask a question, because this is good stuff. Honestly, that is great. And our next endeavor, we definitely going to revisit our values and setup. So again, I knew this time would fly. I didn't even get to the heart of it all, but I think I covered everything for now to give everybody and I know they're going to listen to what you had to share and hopefully find inspiration in resilience, in values, and persistence, right? So I love it, TLB. This has been absolutely amazing. I'm not even going to wrap it up. There's nothing to wrap up, because we're going to just say to be continued.
Great seeing you, and grateful to be here, and just grateful for our friendship, right?
Absolutely. Well, after we end recording, we're going to do a little post pick and give a little teaser some great values. And thank you, TLB, for being who you are for Brownstone, for us as friends, for me, and being a great Texas little buddy, one and only. And I pray nothing but continued success for you.
Yes, same here, friend.
Okay, till next time.